Joining us, we have Maritime Attorney Nyree Alfonso. Pleasant good evening to you, Ms. Alfonso. I haven't spoken to you for the year, so Happy New Year, and I hope that you're safe.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mikey, and thanks for having me on, and good evening to you and your listeners.
Thank you so much.
And your viewers.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the dark fleet of oil tankers. Now, we're hearing a lot of talk. I mean, we see what happened in Tobago. We heard from the Chief Secretary today, Farley Augustine, say, listen, somebody has to be held accountable for this. You know, the fact that we're hearing it's two vessels, whatever they were engaged with. But before we get to that and how these techniques are put in place to circumvent the law, especially maritime law and as far as geopolitical laws, can somebody or any company, as the case may be legally held for what took place in Tobago?
Well, the simple answer is yes. I mean, first you have to detect, the ownership of the vessel, whether it has any insurance. We have something called a P&I club, a protection and indemnity club, that provides insurance and other liability coverage. If you discover those facts, you can make a claim. But unfortunately, even if you detect those things, it's going to be an uphill battle. There are international conventions that deal with pollution by oil in particular, and Trinidad simply is not a party to those conventions. We haven't signed those conventions, and by extension, they're not part of our law. So,
before you go any further, we haven't signed. Why? Is there a particular reason why we haven't signed?
Lack of political will.
Oh.
Right? We are oil producing country, or at least we used to be, and to a lesser extent we are, and therefore you'd expect anything dealing with pollution, we'd be very much up there, right? Could I just say that convention, even Venezuela is a participant on that convention. They've signed their treaty obligation. We have not.
Is it that we don't get the information, we don't get the memo, we don't get the correspondence? I mean, one would think that we sit on many of these committees, global committees. We interact with so many different countries that as far as communication, I don't see that to be a problem. And compounded with the fact that, as you said, oil producing, we would want to make sure that everything is covered. Because, you and I simply can't just go on the roadways with a vehicle that is not insured. Let's be right. Even if it's to protect ourselves as well, it's also protect people that we unfortunately may crash into, or, a taxi driver can go out there and ply his trade and leave those passengers in the car not covered. So why? Why would we overlook something like that?
Well, a very good analogy, I must say. And the fact is, with lower possible liability and outcomes of a car accident, we haven't decided that it is important to sign up to this international convention and to, more importantly, bring it into our local law. Let's start off. The starting point is the legislation in Trinidad that governs the little bit that we do have oil pollution from vessels and discharging vessels, and as in this case, is from 1951. Right? So we are already in trouble, right? So the newer conventions and newer liability regimes that could bring compensation to our shores, not just oil, we simply haven't moved in that direction. And I say it's political will. It's not that we don't get the memo. We are, as you say, we are sitting in the UN. We have a representative at sitting at the highest levels in the UN. We've always had representatives. So I say it's political will, and maybe I should be fair and say political common sense. I don't know.
Yeah, but the Chief Secretary is saying, listen, and I agree with him. If someone creates an accident in your backyard, and basically it affects everything that you would do on a normal day, because if you go to a lawyer and you say, listen, I was in an accident, a good lawyer will tell you, make a journal. If you wake up the next morning and you find it's difficult to make a cup of coffee, to go about your business, all of this is compiled to make up whatever compensation package that you need to get based on your accident, because it has hindered you, it has created an inconvenience. So you're talking about tour boats. You're talking about people who rely on the beach to ply their trade, whether it be beach chairs, umbrellas, a list of people that are affected. And you are saying that, hey, this ship is leaking, I'm going to jump off, I'm going to go on another ship, leave this here, let it go down, and it's going to be hard to even find out what you can do to bring about some sort of legal justice in that situation?
Well, let's put it this way. If we really have 360 radar capability in Trinidad, as the Minister of National Security has consistently claimed, when that accident happened, whatever it was, whatever the nature of the maritime incident was, whether the boat just went down, whether it struck something, whether something struck it, whatever the nature of it, that should have been detected if we really have 360 radar. And more importantly, if it was detected, a Coast Guard vessel should have been immediately dispatched to the scene. None of that, all of that is, theory. No, none of that happened.
Yeah. I want to ask you something.
Right? So,
and that's difficult. I mean, I know people are right now viewing and trying to wrap their head around this because they're looking at the disaster that took place. They're looking at the fact that so many people who rely on the beaches, again, to get a good living, to carve out their living, they've been affected. And they didn't ask for this. The people at Tobago didn't ask for this. I don't think anybody would ask for this in their backyard, especially at the peak of a tourism season where so many people are expected to come and visit the island. I mean, we just had Carnival. Now, for to hear the Chief Secretary say somebody's going to pay, somebody has to pay, but that, I guess, is easier said than done.
Well, okay, so I'm a civilian. Maybe a well knowledgeable civilian, but I'm a civilian. So it cannot be, if we have that radar capability, that we are not able to detect what transpired, get details of the owners of the vessel. I mean, when you go on the usual marine traffic and so on, there's a lot of information missing about owners, about, a flag is there. In fact, when you go on marine traffic, the details of this vessel are coming up as a decommissioned tanker, right? So, I mean, starts to beg the question, when you have a decommissioned vessel, that means it's decommissioned, it's not working. It may not have proper insurance. Its ownership may be well hidden, but again, the state has a lot of tools available to it to divine and to ascertain, who is really the owner and operator of this vessel and whether the vessel has insurance. If the vessel has insurance, even though we don't have the right law, there are certainly regimes by which you can go after the owners using, we do this all the time. Many of the claims that we do, the origin is not Trinidad and Tobago, and we are able to get compensation for people from outside of the jurisdiction. So the compensation is coming from inside. Sometimes the incident happens in Trinidad and Tobago, but everybody else is outside.
All right.
So the state must have, I said, arms and legs and tools and so on, able to get to that point. Because I would class myself as at best a knowledgeable civilian.
All right. So the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard has confirmed that at least 2 vessels were involved in the oil spill, which has been engaging the attention of the Tobago Emergency Management Agency and other entities since February 7. Now, we've had some days here with this, and many people are asking why it's taking so long. Now, the abandoned vessel, the Gulf Stream, was found overturned near shore at Cove Bay on the Atlantic side of Tobago. So they're basically saying 2 vessels were involved. I don't know how to put that, whether or not there was a crew. Well, there has to be a crew. And I guess...
There has to be a crew. The vessel that is overturned, the Gulf Stream, appears to be some sort of, oil tanker. So they know automated oil tankers. They must have some crew at some point in time.
Yeah, but let me ask you this, Ms. Alfonso. Now, a vessel, to have it registered is one thing. But to register an oil tanker is not something that you simply go down and you get a stamp and you pay just a sum. I mean...
No, Mikey, this is the point, This vessel is reading, if I remember, 1975, 76 construction. I mean, I have to tell you, all of the tankers that would have been built in that era would have been single-hull vessels, more than likely. And those vessels were decommissioned internationally because of the danger of exactly what we are seeing here, of the outer hull being compromised and you get access instantaneously to the cargo tanks. So that was deemed decades ago to be, very, very risky. After I have a feeling it was a major oil disaster. I think it might have been in Alaska, but the protocols for construction of oil and chemical tankers changed dramatically. So now you have to have a double skin. You have to have an outer hull and an inner hull. And of course, you would expect now that if there was a piercing of the outer hull, that the tanks would not make contact with the sea, which is what is happening. No, potentially what is happening here. Yeah. Now, those tankers that didn't have double skins, double hulls, were decommissioned by international convention all over the world. The West Indies and I think some places in Africa got a grandfather period, but our grandfather period expired, 15 years ago, more than 10 years ago. Let's just put it that way. So a tanker built in the 1970s should not be in operation and carrying anything, period, full stop, shouldn't be carrying anything. It should have been decommissioned and scrapped.
Yeah, one would think so. Really and truly. And as I said, registering such a vessel is not an easy thing. And I think what you're talking about, there had to be the Exxon Valdez.
It might have been, it's certainly one of the major disasters in which,
in Alaska,
millions of gallons went into the water.
Yeah.
The protocols in terms of how you construct, I said we've had several disasters in.
Yeah, and I think the world.
Alaska.
The world has learned from the Exxon Valdez incident in Alaska. I don't know. So that ran to my head immediately when I saw what took place in Tobago. But let's touch on the dark fleet vessels for people who really don't know in the maritime arena. When we talk about dark fleets, what's that about?
Okay, so those are the vessels who are prepared, tending to be older vessels, are prepared to break the sanctions which have been imposed on several countries. Russia is one, Iran is another, and unfortunately for us, Venezuela is right next to is another one. So first world vessels owned by first world companies do not want to have their vessels go into sanctioned countries to take sanctioned oil to transport it anywhere because their vessels could be sanctioned. So what you do is you take a variety of I don't want to say derelict, but not well-appointed vessels, not first-class vessels. You get, and you run the risk of, Uncle Sam saying, listen, I'm going to seize your vessel, or your vessel can't call at my port. And they run that risk. They take up the sanction oil being produced by countries who are under sanction from the United States and Europe, and they deliver it to point A, point B, or point C. Yeah. So those are the vessels that turn off what we call AIS. AIS is like a GPS for vessels, which is satellite tracking. Right? So it works on a system of satellite tracking. So you can track in real time using AIS where the vessel is, when it left the port, where is she going, where she come from, and those kinds of details. And they tend to turn off the AIS tracking so that they cannot be detected by radar systems in various countries and the satellite tracking system. And that tells you they're doing something illegal. Drugs, money laundering, well, it can't be money laundering, but drugs, illegal guns and ammunition, and of course, sanctioned oil will be another one.
Yeah, I mean, based on what you've just described, I mean, these dark fleets, it's no different than someone, making a submarine to transport narcotics. So these vessels basically are outlined with anything in particular?
When you say outline?
As far as the structure goes.
No. I mean, as I said, they will take older vessels, which, really have reached the end of their life.
They're not seaworthy. So these vessels can be deemed not seaworthy.
They may not be seaworthy. They may also be tankers, as I have described, which could no longer operate because they're single-hulled. Right? So they might have resuscitated an older tanker, put it together as quickly as they could, get the engines working, and say, okay, if this is seized, this is an old tanker that I can't use in any event. So if they seize it, if American Coast Guard encounters me in the open seas and seizes the cargo and the vessel, as they say in Trinidad, no big thing, right? Haven't lost a multi-million-dollar tanker that is capable of trading internationally.
But how are these vessels recognized on sea? I mean, you must have some identity once it is that you're moving from some part of the world to the next.
Yeah, well, no matter if you're, you have to, it's like a plane, right? You have to file in the port. I'm clearing in Venezuela, for argument's sake, and I'm clearing to go to Trinidad, or I'm clearing to go to St. Eustatius, or I'm clearing to go wherever in the world. So they do have to file papers, but I mean, what I'm trying to be delicate. There are certain areas in the world that you can get a clearance, but not be entitled to a clearance by paying the right fee.
Oh, so someone is definitely
not necessarily specified fee in a government schedule, but a fee.
I understand. So what flag would I have as far as to identify me, my vessel?
Well, a lot of those types of vessels will go to the what we call the FOC flag. So that's not a curse word. Flag of convenience. So we have some flags of convenience in the Caribbean. St. Vincent is one. Panama is also fairly regional. Liberia is another one. Just giving you three off the top of my head. So those FOC ship registries will basically give you a blag. Pay the right fee, you might get a blag. But they are more relaxed. To be more fair, they have a more relaxed regime in terms of what they require of your vessel, in whether she's seaworthy, whether she's double hulled, whether she's up to full, her full specifications and so on. They're more relaxed. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, so they don't need a comprehensive breakdown as far as making sure everything is there, checks and balances. So you have more of a flexibility to do business. Basically, it's like an offshore account that would be equivalent to that?
Yeah, something like that, because the robustness of the main registries, like if you are registered in the American registry or something that does not exist in the FOC registry. That's a reality, and that's why people flock to them. First world vessels as well flock to them as well, because they rather not have to. They come out, their owners are in Denmark or in the Netherlands or Europe, in other parts of Europe and United States, but they rather not be controlled by more robust regimes, so they go to the flags of convenience. Cheaper too. Annual fees and so on are cheaper.
Yeah, so I would think so. Again, Nyree, it's been a pleasure. I want to thank you so much for very insightful. I mean, here it is, we're able to connect the dots. So let's see how this plays out. We'll have you back here on The Observer. Again, it's a pleasure hearing from you, and best of luck to you and your entire team, and be safe out there.
Thank you very much. Same to you, Mikey.
Thank you.
All the best.